Hello, Jake Shields. Thanks for joining me
Hey,
on the same drugs.
yeah, no problem.
It's good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's been a while since I was in Sayulito. I guess that was New Year's Eve. That's a fun little town you're living in.
Yeah, really fun. I'm hoping that we can get you back there sometime soon.
Hey, it's an easy place to get me to. It's like, once you come to Costa Rica or Mexico or right in the beach, it's like, sure, I'm down. When they try to get me like Midwest or something, it's like, yeah, it's going to cost a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. There's more incentive to come places
Yeah.
like Sayulita. Um, so I enjoy talking to you in general,
Mm-hmm.
but I've been wanting to get someone on to talk specifically about jujitsu and masculinity and that kind of relationship. I guess because I feel like there's been lots of conversations. I mean, in part, I'm interested,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never done jujitsu before. But in part, there's lots of conversations happening these days, probably over the past decade, maybe a little less, around masculinity, around gender, around what some people, some feminists would call toxic masculinity, and so on and so forth. And after I sort of started following, a wider diversity of people, I would say, and becoming more interested in fighting and like MMA and stuff like that, I sort of started seeing a pattern where I like developed this thesis that all good men do jujitsu, which isn't to say that like all men who are good do jujitsu,
Mm-hmm.
but like men who are
Yeah.
like really into jujitsu tend to be like very good men. And I
Mm-hmm.
just wondered if you had any thoughts about that.
It's very interesting. It's obviously a complex topic and a lot going on there. But yeah, I've been involved in jiu-jitsu, wrestling jiu-jitsu my whole life. And I think it is, you don't really think about it, but it does make you, I think, a stronger person, mentally, because it's so hard pushing through it, but also you're more confident physically because you can handle any situation. And yeah, you're never really thinking about masculinity of it, but when you're out there training, guys trying to choke you out, it just makes you humble. It's pretty humbling when a guy's punching you in the head or choking you unconscious, and I think gives you a different perspective. And it's been really interesting this last couple of years because the jiu-jitsu community and the fight community has completely rejected the woke nonsense, and it's happened to be where I was randomly. And it's nice seeing the people that I'm surrounded by are completely just like, yeah, we're not having this, and I'm very fortunate. Like my girlfriend and stuff, some of her friends are just like having white privilege meetings and stuff. My friends are just like, what the hell is going on? We're it's the most mixed race group, mixed culturally, everyone gets along great.
Yeah, and I guess I mean I wonder about that relationship too, because it seems to me that there's a lot of men who are in the fight community who are very humble, and I think it must make you comfortable with your masculinity rather than like ashamed about masculinity.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you're out there, it's fighting another man, beating the hell out of each other. It's I mean, it's a pretty masculine sport, and it's humbling. It can make it's confident stuff would beat people up, but then someone beats you up on a bad day. It's humbling too, and it's I think it makes guys secure their sexuality, secure with themselves, the confidence overall, and and I think maybe it's good to have a bunch of here's another aspect I didn't really think of, but it allows you to have a bunch of healthy male relationships. I think maybe a lot of men nowadays aren't around a lot of other like tough manly men, and we're in there training together, so we're around men, talking shit to each other, doing what men always did throughout history, roughing it up. And a lot of people aren't doing that. They're the opposite. We have to watch what they say. They have to be politically correct, and we go out there and talk shit to each other, box each other, beat each other up, but then we're laughing and hugging each other after. So I might be
Right.
sparring like Nick Diaz, talking shit, we're sparring, but then we're hugging after, laughing, being best friends.
Yeah, like I think that there's a level of respect there that probably doesn't exist for men who might end up in fights but aren't part of the fight community, so haven't developed that sort of relationship with other men. And so that if they're, if they end up in some kind of fight with a man, it's like more, for lack of a better word, toxic.
Yeah, and I think we're just obviously we doing all the training. You're a lot more comfortable if you get in a fight, which probably makes you less likely to get in a fight. Because I'm so confident whenever I get in street altercations. People have always just, they could see right away that not to mess with me. The guys have always like, at least in the last like 20 years, everyone's always like backed down as soon as I've like stepped up to let them know I wasn't gonna take crap. Guys, they can look at me and see my demeanor, maybe see the ears, and they just know, okay, don't fuck with this dude. I better back up and listen to him.
Yeah, but probably, I mean, and the confidence they would be able to discern, and the fact that like are, I don't know, I mean, that confidence would probably send the message that you're not afraid of a fight.
Yeah, I think when someone calmly tells you they're going to, beat you up if you don't stop doing something, they're, instead of like yelling at them, they get a little more concerned than if guys like up yelling at the face. It's kind of like a warning, but like, a stern warning. Like, this is how it's going to be for not to beat you up. There's your options,
Yeah. I mean, this is sort of a like pop culturally thing, but like, I know I watched the video last night of Will Smith attacking Chris Rock
Yeah.
at the Oscars. Did you see that?
Yeah, that was hilarious. Like, when it was everywhere. Went to Twitter last night, and that's like the only thing that was on there. It was pretty hilarious. So
yeah, I mean, I thought it was a joke at first. I was like, this is got to be a setup, and then it turned out to be real. And I
I'm
was
pretty
just
sure
like,
it was real.
yeah, like what a. I mean, I now of course like every single conversation online is about that and like masculinity and toxic masculinity and so on and so forth. But I mean, I actually kind of did think, I was like, you know what, if there is such a thing as toxic masculinity, that's probably it, because I found it so embarrassing and stupid.
Yeah, I think it was completely humiliating for Will Smith to do that. Like, everything about it was bad. To go and slap Chris Rock, who's smaller than them, for making a joke. It's just, there's a whole, I think it's like pent up thing about his wife. Like, I don't know the details, but I guess, they sleep around, which I'm not Puritan. I'm not judging what they do, but I think it's also maybe the way the relationship's been portrayed makes him look like the weaker one. Like, she's the one benefiting from it the most. So I think it makes him look kind of a weak beta manner. And that was probably his rejection of trying to like stand up for it. Cause, from an outsider, it looks like she kind of wears the pants and bosses them around. So I think that was kind of his rejection to that. And it wasn't a good look for him, in my opinion. I think it was extremely humiliating. And it was kind of weird that Hollywood just kind of acted like it was okay. They were over there like saying, "Oh, are you okay?" to him. And then he wins the Oscar. He doesn't get escorted out. He's over there like crying. It's just, in my opinion, it was a pathetic look for Will Smith, but I'm sure that people disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And I think that, like it's true. Like that's a theory that makes sense. I mean, we don't know if it's true or not, I suppose, but it makes sense that like he probably feels emasculated by the situation and that the situation is public. Like, it's one thing if they're going to do that privately, but they've really talked publicly about it, which is a bit odd. And I think sort of an unhealthy thing to do personally.
Yeah, especially if she's like out and dates other guys and stuff like that. I don't care if people do sexually. I'm no Puritan, but people like when they start, if the guy's your girlfriend or wife and she's out there with another man in public holding hands, that's just it's not a good look. That's demasculating, and I think any man, would, or most men would stop that right away, and it's just, and he probably let it go too far, and it's probably building them up, eating them up, and that was his reaction.
Yeah, and it was, from my understanding, like after sort of watching some of the like reaction videos, including like his reaction when Chris Rock was telling the joke, and he seemed to think it's funny. And supposedly what happened was he thought it was funny, and then it became clear to him that his wife was pissed, and that's when he decided to go up and slap him.
Yeah, that makes it even worse because I saw that where he's sitting there laughing. I didn't notice that first. I was watching. He's sitting there just laughing hysterically, and then all of a sudden he jumps up and hits him. It was so weird, and that's why I think it was real not acted too. If you watch all their emotions, their expressions, it was just so random. And then Chris Rock had that look of just like shock, like what's going on. It just, I don't think they're that good of actors, to be honest. I've seen them act that looked way better than their actual acting. So that to me was real. People say he didn't hit him that hard, but it's like most people don't know how to throw a slap that hard. It's not like everyone knows how to throw a hit.
Right. Yeah. And it's like he suddenly is like, gotta protect my wife, which is obviously like that's like a natural masculine thing to want to do, to protect your wife or girlfriend or whatever.
But it's different too, though, when it's a comedian. It's Chris Rock, who's his friend, making a joke. It was maybe a little rude, but it's more, you gotta learn there's a time and place when you're, I'm all about protecting women and sticking up for my girlfriend. I believe in that. I'm not a feminist. I'm like, men should protect their women. But that's just, there's also a time and place for it. And that was an extreme case of where you don't do it.
Yeah. I mean, and I wonder too, if it's like, as very well, we're now living in this culture where, comedy is really under attack. It's like people expect comedy to fit their political inclinations, which is ridiculous. The only point of comedy is to like be funny, and obviously there's cultural commentary that goes along with it. But it's like, come on, man! Like, you told a joke. If you're in Hollywood, if you're a public figure in general, certainly if you're a famous celebrity or actor, people are gonna make jokes. Like, come on.
Yeah. And that's the thing. His wife's a semi-celebrity too, I assume. I mean, I don't know if she is, but I don't know what she's famous for. But I don't know if it's just for marrying him or what. But people know who he is, know who she is. So you gotta be able to take a joke. When you're in the public spotlight, you're gonna get attacked. I get attacked all the time. People, when it first happened, maybe I'd look online and be like, oh, that's messed up. But now I think it's hilarious. You go look at like the Twitter comments or Facebook comments. It's hilarious. These guys with no screen name, no profile pic, talking crap about you. Stuff's funny. So it's if you're a celebrity, you gotta learn to deal with people talking shit about you.
Yeah, it's such a strange reaction that I sort of feel like maybe wouldn't have happened in the past, and now it's like, oh, you can't say that, and it's like, actually he can. Like, this is the whole point of having a comedian host these kinds of events, is that he's probably gonna like roast some of the actors in the audience, or like she's an actress, Jada Pinkett Smith, so she's also like she's a public figure, like she's up for grabs as well.
Yeah, no, I think it was like I said earlier, it was an overcompensation for him feeling humiliated, so he felt like he had to defend her honor. But that was just like not a case where she actually needed her honor defended, because it wasn't really a serious insult. It was a Chris Rock making a joke.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get back to jiu-jitsu a little bit. I'm curious to know how you first got involved. How did you get into doing jiu-jitsu?
Well, I wrestled in high school and college, which are very similar sports, also extremely manly and makes you tough. I think wrestling, anyone that's signed to put the kid in wrestling, there's nothing that makes you tougher than wrestling. Everyone that's gone through wrestle will say the same thing. It helps them in business, life, everything. It's just makes you tough. And then I met in college, I met Chuck Liddell. I'm not sure if you know who he is. He's a huge star in fighting, but most people know who he is, but you're brand new to fighting. He's one of the biggest stars, but I met him before he became a huge star. He was an up and comer in the UFC, and I kind of started training with him, and I went and sparred him one day, and he just beat the crap out of me. And I'm like, I thought I could beat anyone up, because I was just rough wrestling. Every time I got in a fight, I would just smoke the guy. And then Chuck smoked me. So I'm, I need to start training with this guy, and started training from there. And then, met Cesar Gracie, Nick Diaz, Nate Diaz. You don't know the fight game, but these are all like, huge stars in the fight game.
And I don't know how much you know about the origins of jiu-jitsu, but what's the kind of purpose? Like, what's the philosophy around jiu-jitsu, I guess?
Well, that's complicated, because jiu-jitsu was originated in Japan and through judo and jiu-jitsu, and then went through Brazil. It got redefined, so it's and then now it's getting redefined again through martial arts. That's a really complex question. So originally, I don't really know how it started in Japan, but they were using it a lot in judo, which was a sport and competitions for fighting. And then it got to the Gracies, and I guess they weren't as strong, the Gracies, as some of the Japanese guys that were throwing people with judo. So some of the Gracies worked on refining like guard technique with bottom, so self-defense to wait your opponent out and find a submission. And then it's just the sports just kept evolving. They did so well with the UFC, so everyone wanted to learning it. So it came one of the top fighting arts.
Mm-hmm. And I guess, it's one of those things. I don't know that much about martial arts, but I feel like it's one of those things, particularly in fighting and martial arts, maybe, where like, if you are a smaller guy, if you are a weaker guy, you can beat a bigger guy if you have better technique. Yeah,
and that's actually what jiu-jitsu was based off of, because it was I think it was Helio Gracie was the one. I hope I don't have my history wrong, but he was the one, because the guy the Japanese guy, he was a big, strong guy, but he wasn't as strong. So he started working on techniques to not use his strength. So that's when it really got redefined, because wrestling is all about power and force, but this jiu-jitsu got where you don't need size. Size is still going to help, but a lot of the techniques are based off, the technique, not using strength.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that, you do so many different kinds of fighting, and I just wonder if I wonder if you think that jiu-jitsu in particular helped you in particular ways, like out in the world, or maybe in terms of like your relationship to your body or your masculinity or anything.
I'm completely addicted to jiu-jitsu, like a lot of people that train. So like, it's my, I need to train jiu-jitsu, or my mental health isn't going to be good. Like when COVID, they're trying to shut the gyms down. I'm just like, I can't like sit at home and not train every day. I use my brain. I'm working my body. It's how I go out there. And it's like my meditation and my therapy and all that. Jiu-jitsu is when I'm free. So for me, it's like absolutely crucial to my life. I think a lot of people feel that way. You talk to these guys, they just get so addicted. It's something you can't understand if you're not doing it. It's like, when you're out there, it's just the moment where you're just flowing, not thinking, it's weird because you're like fighting another person, but it's also, when you're having a good day, you're in flow state. And it's a rough sport, but sometimes it's also smooth and technical.
Yeah, I mean, my trainers said that to me many times that he's addicted to
Mhm.
jujitsu. So I find that interesting.
Yeah, there's also like lots of different ways to train jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Like I'm training it for the UFC, the highest level mixed martial arts. So we often train more of a rougher, violent style of jiu-jitsu versus the more technical, chill. Which I still train that way sometimes, but more of the time I'm training more the UFC rough style jiu-jitsu versus the more technical. So a lot of people, if you're not a fighter, you're doing it for martial art. You don't need to train near as rough as we do because you're still going to be able to easily beat an untrained opponent with training a lot less rough and a lot harder on your body.
Do you think that, like, when we're talking about like the UFC in particular, like that kind of fighting, do you think that people who have more training and more experience in jiu-jitsu have a better advantage, or does that sort of apply widely? Like, some people obviously are better at boxing, some people are obviously better at Muay Thai or whatever, like they have a stronger background in various areas.
I mean, it's really tough to say what the best martial art is. In my opinion, if I had to pick one, I would say jiu-jitsu, which the early UFCs, jiu-jitsu came and dominated. The thing is now guys are learning, they're good at all martial arts. They've gotten a lot better learning how to defend jiu-jitsu. So you do have like some guys that are good boxers and wrestlers that don't have great jiu-jitsu, but they've learned like, the jiu-jitsu offensive. And it's really so hard to say what the best approach is because there's been champs that come from kickboxing backgrounds, judo backgrounds, even one or two from like karate backgrounds. Not as their main art, but GSP came from a karate background, and a lot of people in UFC guys like to make fun of karate, but I mean GSPs legitimately use some of his karate out there, and same with like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. So there's pieces of all martial arts that are great. Like I fought a judo Olympic gold medalist. I won the fight, but he was tough. I got thrown on my head twice. So it's like there's great people from all martial arts, and that's why it's mixed martial arts is so great. We take what works, what doesn't, and combine it all. That's why there's no greater sport in the world, because literally we study every martial art, find out what works, what doesn't, and puts them together. And for me, my style of jiu-jitsu is the grappling. I try to use stuff that'll only work in a fight. I'm not going to do some of the modern jiu-jitsu, which I'm not against it. They're doing it for sport. It's fine, but they do stuff that if you did an actual combat situation, it would get you hurt. Guys like flipped upside down on their head and just stuff for fighting would be dumb, but they're doing it for a sport. So I'm not going to judge them against doing it, but I'm more the traditional martial arts style.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about this? This idea that there's some kind of crisis of masculinity in our culture today. Do you think that's true?
I think there's definitely a crisis, and masculinity is part of it. It's maybe mental health. I think it's people not outside working out enough on their smartphones too much. Kids not going out and playing and roughing around. And yeah, I guess it's definitely masculinity because boys should go to rough around and fight and wrestle and get rough. And that's when they probably start pulling in all this weird, teachers pushing kids, telling them they can pick their genders, which is nonsense. They're just encouraging kids to do something that's not real. Is what I've noticed with a lot of these kids that are doing that. It's almost always the unpopular kids. I know girls in particular, you see them, they're not fitting in, and their teachers being like, oh, you can pick your gender. So if they go and say they're a they or a boy, all of a sudden they're getting more attention. So it's just hard to say what the long-term mental health of this is going to be.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of, I wonder if it's like people, I think a lot of people in general have sort of lost sight of their purpose. And I do feel like maybe a lot of men feel like, what is my role in this world? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, it is hard to find a purpose, but I think every man should wrestle or do jiu-jitsu or some sort of martial art. In worst case, not doing martial arts, at least lift weights. I think it's absolutely crucial that men are doing something physical. We need it for, obviously make us feel better, tougher, stronger, better about yourself mentally. Not to mention when you work out, releases endorphins, which for girls and guys, I think working out is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, I don't know, I mean, it's not, like obviously like I come from a feminism background, so I'm not the kind of person who's going to say, like women should be like this and men should be like this. But when we have sort of destroyed the concept of sex and gender and we're pretending as though everyone's the same, mm-hmm. which is total bullshit. Everyone's not the same. Like men and women are not the same physically, but they're also not the same in terms of evolution, which impacts like psychology and instincts and, maybe what skills will lean towards or interests. It's not black and white, but, there are general patterns. And I think maybe people are feeling confused about that now.
Yeah, and it seems deliberate, and it's but yeah, there is, like I said, there is big difference between the sexes. To act like there's not is just, it's just absurd. And again, it doesn't mean a girl in some cases can't be, you know, leader and the guy the vice versa. But as a whole, it's like, you know, most men like to lead. Most girls prefer a man that leads. It seems like a happy relationship. It's just the natural order of things. Doesn't mean it has to be that way in every situation, but it's just it just seems natural and people like it more. Just like, you know, for men, typically, you know, they have hundreds of sexual partners and not really damageable. For a girl, often it does affect them differently, just because we're biologically different.
Mm-hmm. So last time we talked, we were talking pretty specifically about this, you know, trans woman, Alana, who won an MMA fight, and you were talking, as you mentioned earlier, about how in general that community is not super woke, which makes it a bit strange that they're sort of allowing this, like, you know, male athlete to fight a chick. I wonder, you know, what's happened since then in the community? Have there been larger conversations about this? Has anything changed? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah. The MMA community has completely rejected it. It doesn't mean they won't allow them to fight again, but they're all against it. The men and luckily the women started speaking up, because early on, you were actually one of the first women to speak up, but early on, hardly any women would speak up against this nonsense. They were like too scared to, because, you know, and there was mostly men speaking up, and everyone would be like, well, only men care, not women. And, you know, like I said, I do think it's a man's job to fight for his women, but ultimately it came down, if women weren't speaking up too, it's not going to get stopped. And, you know, still hasn't been stopped, but I'm seeing a lot of people speak up against it. And like, you know, a few months ago, last time we talked, it wasn't really like that. I mean, you were one of the early people on the subject, so I know you probably got attacked brutally by these people. And now I can say things without getting attacked as brutally like I used to. So I think the whole momentum, people's opinion, or at least being not afraid to speak against it. I think all along people agreed with our opinions. They were just too scared to say anything. But now everyone's starting to speak up. And particularly I noticed when I posted something making fun of this, like no women would comment on the picture or like it even. And now like tons of them are like, oh yeah, this is nonsense. This is, you know, we're being erased. It's women have finally woke up and see they're the ones being affected. Like obviously as a man, you know, I have a daughter and, you know, girlfriend, I try to fight to protect them, but ultimately it affects women a lot more than men.
Yeah, and it does seem like now a lot more people are speaking out against it, either, you know, because they genuinely care about how it's impacting women, or just because it's such an obvious joke. Like, you probably followed what happened with Leah Thomas, the swimmer, which, you know, it's so crazy to me that is even allowed to happen, that at least people are speaking out about it.
I think that's what woke people up. Exactly. It was so absurd, but that was the final straw. That people would be always like, oh, they don't have an advantage. And it's just so obviously this guy was, you know, a dude not ranked last year. And now he's a woman ranked high, winning nationals. It's just, if you can't look at that and see it's absurd, you're clearly not an intelligent person.
Yeah. And it's hilarious. It's kind of maddening, but I find it more hilarious to watch people twist themselves into knots trying to defend it.
Yeah, it's weird to watch people try to defend it. But luckily I'm seeing a lot less people defend it than knock it now. And that's not really how it was before. Everyone was so scared. I mean, you were talking about this long before me, I believe, you know, and you probably really got a lot of hate. So it's nice seeing it switch the opposite direction, where people are realizing this is a case where it's just so extreme. We're like, come on, this is absurd. And, you know, there's some other issues that get a little trickier, maybe like the bathrooms and all that get a little more complicated, but because the issue is there's different types of trans. You know, there's definitely real people that, you know, that have the gender dysphoria, but there's also a lot of creepy men that'll use it as an excuse to be creeps. So it becomes a tricky issue.
Yeah, and you know, athletics and sport is one of those things where it should be really clear.
that one's pretty clear. You got this dude's like 6'2", just smoking the women, and he wasn't even a very good swimmer. It's just that's an example of how men are just so much physically superior to women. I mean, coming from fighting in jiu-jitsu, I think I really see the extremes, because like, you know, I rarely train with women. What I do is like I go light, I just kind of play around. I'm not like seriously competing against women, because the strength difference is so big. I feel like I'd hurt them if I did. So it's just seeing the strength difference is laughable.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think it says about the kind of person who would do that? Like about somebody like Alana McLaughlin or Leah Thomas, like any man who would just feel comfortable being like, yeah, I deserve to be here competing against women. This is how I want to win.
Yeah, a total sociopath. And it's hard to say like what's going on. Do they actually believe they're a woman? Do they hate women? Maybe they secretly hate women. It's a way to get payback. It's hard to say what goes on in their head, but they're clearly not mentally well. Any man that would want to switch and go against women, especially I think the Leah guy was ranked like number 400, I don't know, number like 450 in the country or something,
Yeah.
switches over and just dominates. And it's like, clearly you are full of shit. You're not a great swimmer. You're an average swimmer who's going in, taking advantage to be a champion, stealing from the girl that should have won it. And it's like, these things mean stuff to people. People are like, oh, it's just sports. It doesn't matter. But it does to me. I'm an athlete and like we've dedicated our whole lives to this. And then it also matters because they're trying to force us to believe something that we know isn't true is true. That's why it's a big issue when they're trying to tell you, this is a real woman, and you can look at it and be like, maybe I'll respect her and call her her, but that's not a real woman. You can't they're trying to force you to believe something that we all know isn't true.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just think it's lacking in integrity to me, because I feel like a person who had good morals just wouldn't do that.
Yes.
Regardless of, how they identify. It's like, that you're not literally female. Like,
yes.
This isn't fair because that you have an advantage. Give me a break.
Well, you notice all the trans men are competing with women because they know it's true too. They know they're actually a woman still. And a lot of them, they're probably allowed to take steroids. They're probably do different rules. So they're still cheating the system because I bet the trans women, they let them take steroids and other women can't.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. They're suddenly allowed to break the rules essentially because of this trans ideology. Yeah. So I guess I wonder what I'm getting back to the martial arts jiu-jitsu thing again. So for somebody who wants to start getting into this, what would you recommend? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people feel intimidated, but that's probably good. Like, that's probably part of the humility process.
See, it depends on like what level you're trying to do. Are you trying to do it for fun and hobby and stay in shape, or are you trying to do martial arts seriously? For most people, they just want to, get in shape, have some fun. And I would say, look up the jiu-jitsu gyms in your town or city. And I would recommend stop by a couple of them. There's 2 or 3, stop by a couple of them, because you just might feel more vibe with some people. Someone might be a better coach, but they also might just be a better environment there. And a lot of jiu-jitsu is, it's having an environment, which is so crucial. I think that's something that helps us a lot too, is we can go in and have an environment, people to hang out with, our friends we see every day. Me, I mean, I'm a high level guy, people know who I am, but I can go anywhere in the world and walk in any gym and be treated like family. I can go to, the slums of the Dominican Republic, get brought into an all black neighborhood, walk in and teach a class and get treated like God. Guys tell me, hey, you can't be going to this neighborhood, you're white. But I'm like, no, they know who I am. I can walk in and train with these guys like brothers. I can go to Japan and train with all the Japanese who don't speak the same language, but we're hugging because we're brothers, because we're out there doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's nice. That's interesting. I mean, yeah, I think that in you can go to gyms. I mean, like, for example, in boxing, it's like you can kind of go to like bougie fitness gyms because you want to just do boxing as like a fitness activity, which of course is fine. Or you can kind of go to the more real gyms if that's what you're interested in. I mean, for me, like, I feel like, and I suck. I'm not good. I don't know anything. So I don't want anyone to get the wrong impression. But I did like try out a few different gyms in Vancouver and a few different trainers. And like, I liked it, but I didn't really like it that much until I started training with Chris and Sailita at Colombo, because he's legit. And he's also like, he's such a great man. And, again, he's a guy that does jiu-jitsu. So I'm like, okay, all good men do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. A lot of these boxing exercises, they're great, but they're not real boxing. They're like boxer size. There's a big difference. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do those. It's a great workout. But if you're really learning to box versus doing boxer size, it's 2 completely different things.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, I'll let you go. It was really great to talk with you. And again, I hope we can get you out to Sailita to do a camp sometime.
Yeah,
soon.
I'll talk to Chris and figure out my schedule and try to come out there and figure out a way to set up. It'd be cool to do a little camp down there.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe I'll see you in Sailita, or maybe I'll see you in Vegas when we're out there.
You'll be out here in July. I should be out here. So
okay.
I'll see you then.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.